Kia ora. Welcome to the second part of my river tank build. Now, in my last video I mentioned the two options that I was considering for the substrate, one being a deep bed and the other being a plenum using an undergravel filter. It's fair to say that both methods are popular within the hobby and both methods have some very passionate followers. But I've decided to do it my way. And to tell you what I came up with, cast your beady eyes on this. Now, have you figured out what I'm going to do? To give you some background, the left-hand side will be the river bed, which will be planted, and the right-hand side will be the rocky river stream. When I filled up the tank to test for any leaks or distortion of the frame, I also took the opportunity to test my air stones, as I wanted plenty of air coming between the rocks, especially if I want to keep hill stream loaches. First up was an Aqua One long air stone, which I thought would be ideal under my riverbed, but unfortunately it failed the bubble test. Next up was an Aqua One disc air stone, which I've used before. That would be okay. I had a Pemplex filter stone, which I got on Amazon. I guess you get what you pay for. Finally, one from a parts box, and that seemed to work. Should be okay. Okay, I need to put you out of your misery. So the left hand side is going to be a dirted substrate, and the right hand side is going to be a plenum. The acrylic divider is going to divide the two and stop the two substrates from intermixing. Okay, so you might be a little bit puzzled, and you might be wondering, will I be able to compare the performance of one method against the other? No. Will I be able to tell if either side actually works? No. Then why? Well, essentially, as I see it, fish keeping should be fun. I'm going to enjoy this little project. I'm going to learn stuff as I go, and that's what it's all about. I'll make a start on the plenum side. Well, here it is, an undergravel filter. Now, I used to use these as a kid. Quite a simple method of filtration. You have this, which, as the name implies, it goes under the gravel, and you can interlock with other pieces to suit the size of your tank. And they work by having a uplift tube. So that would lock in there, and the uplift tube can be adjusted to suit the height of your tank. And essentially the way it works is an air line is dropped down with a bubbler at the end, and you can adjust the flow of the bubbles to suit. As they rise, they create a lift of water, and that water would spill out the top. It's replenished by water coming through the gravel, and so there's a lot of oxygen coming in there, and that would break down the waste and carry out the nitrogen cycle. It's a very efficient method of working. This particular one I bought off Amazon. It's a Plenum product. Not one I'd buy again. The quality is very poor. These tubes were cracked on arrival, and it's got a very, very strong toxic smell to it. It's the strongest sort of plastic smell I've encountered with products I've bought over the years, which makes me wonder, is it really fish safe? But I'm going to use this a little bit different. I'm going to use this for an anox filter, and this in effect will become a plenum. And basically a plenum is in simple terms is a platform where water underneath that platform is very low in oxygen. So to achieve that in this setup, you'd have the bubbler set for just a few bubbles per second, and you can gauge the water flow by seeing how much water comes out the top when you've got the tank water level below the top. Most people would actually just have a very short uplift tube. There's only so much lift can be generated by the bubbles because they're only rising so far. When I used this sort of thing back in the 1960s, the intake tube was very narrow. But even so, you'd still hear stories of coolie loaches somehow getting in there and then living their life and raising young underneath the actual filter itself. In fact, we've probably all got accounts of fry or fish getting caught in filter systems, and it happens in the real world as well. I recall visiting a hydroelectric scheme in South Island. The water came from a lake and then down a hillside and into what were called surge chambers before going through the powerhouse turbines. And the surge chamber just basically reduced the turbulence of the water before it went through the turbine. But fish and eels would come down from that lake and get caught there, and they would grow extremely fat because of the amount of food that was being washed through there. The staff of the powerhouse probably never went hungry. Once in the tank, I covered it with insect mesh that will stop sand from going through into the base. And I'm going to add clay particles over the top. This is in the form of cat litter. Usually the cheapest is the best because you don't want any additives to the cat litter. For example, some brands will have a clumping additive, but you don't want that, and you don't want any chemicals or sweeteners or anything like that which might make it smell nicer. Just plain old clay, that will do. Cat, you can hold on. I've used the whole bag. Don't really need that much. So, cat doesn't need it. I just have to keep the cat out of the tank for the next few days. Ideally, I should be using a iron-rich substrate such as Seachem's fluorite, or sprinkling on the powder laterite, which is high in iron. But I can't get these, so what to do? Perhaps I just need to go for a walk. What do you think of our new road and new footpath? And to top it off, we've got new street lights. Well, actually the street lights went in a year and a half ago. They never worked for some reason. And then a year ago, they all got taken out and shorter ones were put in. They never worked either. We're still waiting. Sometimes the power company comes out and they tinker around with them, but they still don't work. Now we've got some hills ahead, so I hope you'll be able to keep up because this can be heavy going. Now many houses on this road have iron roofs, and if you're putting up an iron roof, you need to be very careful about what type of nail that you're going to hold it down with. This is because metals are different and can be ranked by their electropotential. Now that's a big word for this time of day, electropotential. This ranking is from those with negative charged electrodes to those with positive electrodes. Now, if you stayed awake at school during your science classes, you might be able to understand what I'm talking about. But if, like me, you slept through some of them, then, like me, you won't know what I'm talking about. But in the presence of water, these electrons will flow from the positive to the negative. Okay, positive to the negative. And in this process, the positive metal degrades. And on these roofs, rust is an indication of this happening. Now, also on this road, a number of people will own aluminium-hulled boats. And to give it the best protection, they may not wish to moor it long-term next to a steel boat, as aluminium is more positive than steel. And this leads to galvanic corrosion. Once again, this is the positive to negative effect. So zinc is more positive than aluminium, hence fitting a zinc sacrificial block called an anode will mean that the zinc block will deteriorate before your aluminium hull does. Now these anodes are usually fitted to most larger boats, regardless of construction type. In fact, you can even get some that you hang off the side of your boat as a temporary measure. Now, you're keeping up with me, or should I slow down a bit? Okay, so what's this got to do with aquariums other than having water involved? Well, we've established a plenum, and this has a small, slow flow going in, and any oxygen in that water gets depleted by bacteria first, which then creates the anoxic conditions, anoxic meaning without oxygen. So we're wanting those anoxic conditions for denitrification, getting rid of the nitrates. Okay, so why are we making a fuss about iron? Well, for a start, it's a positive building block for plant growth. Kitty litter clay has negative ions, and the iron also negative ions. And what happens is these draw in the ammonia's positive ions. Anoxic bacteria can then work on that and oxidize the ammonia and nitrate and phosphates into harmless nitrogen gas, which will diffuse into your room. And this fully completes the nitrogen cycle, whereas your standard filtration using aerobic filters, i.e. they've got air involved, they struggle to deal with those nitrates and generally leave them, which hopefully your plants will deal with. You must be near the end. Hey look, there's a team trying to make the lights work. When will they ever learn? So further downstream from this spot is a little bridge that has eel, which you may have seen in my earlier videos. Meanwhile, back at the bridge. And what's that red stuff I can see at the bottom of the stream bed? Might need to go across the road and check it out. I think that I've just found myself an iron bog with its characteristic jelly appearance. More iron than I know what to do with. So I didn't want to pass up this opportunity, and I actually had a container with me. So I scooped up some of that rusty gold along with its iron bacteria and ventured upstream to see if I can get some bacteria for the dirted side of my aquarium. I didn't expect I'd get much in the way of small life because this area has been ravaged by floods over the last few days, and most of the topsoil and wildlife has been swept away. Hopefully there'll be some good bacteria. Well, here's the results of my trip. It's going to seem strange adding heavy metals to my aquarium. Apparently these bogs used to be worked back in the day. Vikings never got this far south, but during their era The iron that they used came from iron bogs such as this. Apparently not so far from here there are also gold deposits, so perhaps I should give up my fish and try to strike it rich. Well, next on the agenda is sand. I'm just using a clay sand. I'm not going to bother rinsing it or washing it again. It will be dusty and it will make the water dusty, but that can be filtered and will clear up. I'm going to enjoy building this. Who said aquariums are not fun? Here I've pulled back the clay from the front edge and packed in sand, which will make it more pleasing to view. I've also done the same on the side. This will just help with the separation of the two zones. Things are going well, so I'll make a start on the side with the dirted substrate. I'm using an off-cut of polystyrene just to help me control the sand which I'm putting on the front edge. This will continue the effect from both sides of the front. Now it's time to add the dirt. It's actually from a bag of organic compost. I didn't have too much in the way of bark, so I've just used it as is. Now later on I'll be adding water, so it's essential that I have bare feet so I can trample it down. I want the finished height to be about 1 inch or 25 millimeters. Adding water to the mix is another fun part, as you get a chance to get your hands dirty. The object being is to press out as much of the air as possible by compacting it down and make sure that you get the soil to your required height and that it's not flooded too much with water. At this stage, some people prefer to leave it overnight, just so that any air pockets can gas out. Here we are next morning, and it's looking good. Ah, the bloody cat. So this is where we are. I've put some more sand in there just to build it up next to the glass. I don't really need sand along that divider, but it will on this side concentrate the more absorbent area. And here I'm just building a temporary wall to hold the support while I add sand along there. Should do it. I've put a couple of markers here to help me level the sand at the front. It's going to look better having sand all the way along there rather than seeing the mix of substrates. In time they'll all turn green with algae anyway. And I've taken out the tape I had on the corners there, which was just reinforcing. Time's moving on. Might have to call it a day, I think. So next week we'll add the secret ingredients to both sides of the tank. We'll build up the next level on the Plenum side and add sand to the dirted side, and from there we can start planning and building the rocky substrate. I must confess I'm a little bit dubious about adding that bog iron. It's completely new territory to me. I've got no idea how toxic or concentrated it might be. So we'll probably find out together. Hope to see you next week.